Yeah,
What code
hopefully
number?
everything's up.
Don't go up to 100 TC. Stay as low as possible.
Okay,
What code
so
number we going in?
we are going in 969. I will be waiting there at the pits. Okay, I'll be waiting here at the end of the pits if you want to jump in. Okay, so
Oh,
Okay.
nou schreeuw hij rekening vast.
yeah, okay, so jump in the car. So with me, and then we go for a lap on Silverstone for tonight's training. So first things first. Everybody in?
Yep.
Okay, so first things first. Driving in the wet. Now you get a lot of different situations. Driving in the wet is probably the most difficult thing in ACC because the track conditions can always change. So your tire pressures will, not like on a dry setup where you know 18 degrees, you put your pressures on this, because it all depends on how much water is on the track. But I want you to take note of the following from our own experience, that if you have light rain or a damp track, then you basically use the same pressures that you use for your dry setup. When you get to a wet track and medium rain, you normally go up with your pressures about 1.5 psi from your dry setup. And when you get to heavy rain, which it looks like it's currently, then you'll go up 2 psi or 2.5. When you're on the wet tires, you aim for a psi of 30. Top end 30.5, low end 29.5.
Is this now also for the damp, or the damp's bit lower?
Yes, that's wet tire pressures.
Okay.
So that's what you want. You don't want to go necessarily too high than that. So if you've got wet tires on, then you aim for 30 psi. That's your pressures. So the other thing is, other tips that I can give you is, when you drive in the wet, put your ABS on 1. Put your brake bias very far to the back. So I'm gonna put mine on 46. And you'll up the TC on your car just to make sure that you get your wheel spin under control.
Sorry, excuse me, before you go,
Yes.
can you just explain again the brake bias to those that don't understand?
Okay.
When you say to the back or to the front, what do you mean?
So the number on the right hand corner there at the bottom, which says 46 now. Whatever percentage is there is how much of your brake force is going to your front wheels. That's how ACC sees it. So if you set it on 46, that means that 46% will go to the front wheels. The rest will go to the rear. The reason why you do it like this is the last thing you want, as soon as you brake in the wet, you don't want too much force on the front wheels, otherwise it'll just lock up and you'll just slide on straight. So that's why you move the brake bias rearwards in the wet. In the dry it's different, because you've got a lot more grip to handle the forces on the front tires. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's
You're all
go.
clear. Stay behind the line. You've got cold brakes all round.
Brake ducts, it still goes about the temperature of the ambient and the track.
Yeah, sorry, pads.
Pads, I use brake pads too. Although brake pads 3 is normally your wet brake pads, I rarely use them. I just use 2 for everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I am recording as well.
Pas is kan ry.
Screenshot soos jy aangaan.
Pit exit's clear.
Almal in, let's go.
My vroom is.
Okay,
Let's
so
get
now
some
we've
heat
got
to
a
these
we've got a
brakes.
wet track. So we're gonna look at obviously the chances are very good for a wet race on Wednesday. So I'm gonna prepare you as if it's a wet race. So the first thing is, try and avoid the curbs where possible. Curbs are your enemy, specifically if you want to give any throttle on curbs. There are some of them that you can get away with, but that's mainly because you're either off throttle or all the weight is on the other side of the car, so the curb really doesn't have that much influence. But as a rule, if you're new to wet driving, then try and avoid the curbs. Now, that being said, when you come into this first corner, you will be cutting over this curb because it's not a load bearing or an accelerating curb. You will be dabbing the brakes. You will be coming in here in 5th gear. You'll be dabbing the brakes, heading over to into 4th gear, and here you can put your right wheels over this curb because all the weight is on the left hand side. You will be coasting through here in 4th gear, trying to bring the car back, and you'll sort of be coasting as well, coming into this corner in the wet. In the dry it will be different, but in the wet you'll be coasting around here. Then you'll slow down, go back into 3rd gear, 2nd if you've got a weird car, and you want to get the apex right about at the end of this green area. This is where you want to get the car, then it must be pointing in the right direction. And be careful to be on the throttle slowly when you get to this point. All the corners you will have the same thing, be gentle on the throttle. That's why you put your TC a bit higher, just to avoid the rear coming out. You can run all the way wide here. There shouldn't be too much of an issue. Don't go on the green stuff. The green stuff is the slippy stuff. So as far as possible, avoid the green areas. Then you'll just straighten out, follow the car in a normal pattern. Over to the right hand side. And then slowly bring the car over back to the left hand side. Now the braking marker for this corner in the dry will normally be right about there where that curb starts in the distance. But in the wet, you will probably brake between this board here and where that curb starts. So roughly in about this area. And you'll brake as much as possible, trail brake in to about 3rd gear. And you'll do a lot of coasting in the wet as well. So you'll be coasting, just keeping it tight, not necessarily on the curb. And as soon as you feel that the car is settled, then gently on the throttle. You can run wide here. Not big of an issue because you are straightening the wheel as soon as you get here. This is still valid, by the way, as long as your right hand wheels are on the curb. This is still valid. So you can use some of that exit because the car is not cornering or anything. Then you'll move over to the right hand side. Prepare for a hard braking zone just before this curb start, around about in this area. And you'll brake into 2nd gear. Some people might use 1st, but I find 2nd is better for traction in the wet. Once again, brake in a straight line, and only at the last possible moment do you bring it in. Because as soon as your car is turned in, you want to straighten it again. So that you can get on the throttle. So you'll have a little squirt on the throttle here, then you'll lift off, just to get the nose around here. Just be careful of cutting too much of the inside on that corner. You'll see there's a big raised edge on that curb. That can cause pressure loss. If you every lap you go over that grass bit there. So try and avoid it to avoid damaging your tires. The car will be very oversteery coming out of this corner. It's slightly off camber, so you'll always feel like the rear wants to step out. So just be patient with the throttle all the way through this corner. And you'll feel that especially coming into this corner in front, it will also want to throw out the rear. So just be gentle and with your inputs and your throttle application. And here you want to just cut across that curb just like that. And you'll feel that the car wants to sort of lose the rear. Then you stay on the left hand side. In the dry, this corner will normally be sort of flat out, but in the dry not. So you wait just for this where this green part starts. And you'll just give it a quick dab on the brake. Shift down 1. And here you can cut this part because the load will be on the left. So you cut this part once again. Be very gentle with your throttle application. Bring it back tight to this apex here. And then you can let it run a bit wide if you need to. But try and be in the middle of the road for this corner. Now the braking marker for this, you'll see the curb on the left. There's a starting point for that curb. And then it gets a little bit wider, wider until it becomes at its widest around about there. And then it's constant throughout. So that's about where your braking marker will be. At that part where it's at its widest point and remains constant. So you'll brake hard down to 2nd gear. Once again, wait for it, turn in late so that you can cut the corner and immediately open your steering wheel. Come over to the right hand side, roughly where this curb on the right hand side starts. That's your brake marker for this very sharp hairpin, down to first gear. So once again, you'll brake in a straight line until the car is slowed down. Only then do you bring the car in so that you can go. As soon as you get that curb, you want to straighten your wheel and only then accelerate. If you are too much on lock and then you'll accelerate, you will lose the rear of the car and you will spin out, especially on that corner. Same with this little kink in the road. You want to take it as smooth as possible, even if you have to feather the throttle to avoid the rear losing. Don't cut too much of this curb in the wet because it will unsettle the car and you will lose the rear on the exit. And then you come out all the way to the end. Watch out for the green stuff, that's normally really slippy. Power down this straight, I don't know their names. And then we get to this awful complex. Now, if somebody doesn't take out the board, then this sort of will be your will be your braking marker. There is no real other things that you can use as a braking marker. The only other thing you can use is to look at the red on the Armco on the right hand side. But then also the brake marker is sort of in the middle of that. So once that red Armco goes out of sight, just after that will be a good reference if they don't take out the board. So here you want to brake in a straight line towards the middle of the track in this direction until the car is slowed down to second gear, and then only you bring it in over this inside part. Gentle on the throttle, second gear, or third, depending on what car you're driving. You're going to brake down to second gear, and here you just want to either hug the corner all the way in a U shape or do a V. But the acceleration point is roughly about here when this last little thing on the inside appears, this little square thing with the red on top. Once you get there, then you start feeding on the power. Be careful not to run out too wide, don't touch the green on the outside, otherwise you will lose the rear there as well. In the wet as well, avoid cutting too much of this curb because it can also unsettle the car. And then all the way to the outside. Now we get to probably the difficult part of this one, is this first corner. Now I want you to have a look at all these little flags on the right hand side. There's 5 of them heading into that corner. Your brake marker will be at the second one, right there. That will be your brake marker in the wet. In the dry you can push it to the second last one before you brake. So here at that, when you reach that third one in your peripheral vision, or the second one, you just brake, take it down to fourth gear, and here you'll just coast. Make sure you just hug this, and then gently get on the power, and let it run out wider. So we're going to go a bit faster. So here we go over to the right hand side. We're going to be in fifth gear. We're going to go straight, dab of brake, fourth gear, over the inside part, just coast in fourth gear, let it go, down to third gear, wait for the corner, wait for the green part to end, then we get gently on the throttle. You can over this curve on the inside, gently on the exit, just let it run wide. Come over to the left hand side, now we're waiting for the mark between the board and the curb, run about there, brake in a straight line, down to third. Then just coast, feel if the grip is there. If the grip is there, gently on the throttle, open up the steering over this part, over to the right hand side. Just before the curb, we'll brake down to second gear, wait for it, so that as soon as you turn, you can open the steering. Lift a bit so that the nose can get in, gentle on the throttle, because you'll see that the rear will want to step out as we go here. You see that part? So gentle there. Here in fifth gear, wait for the green part, brake down to fourth, you can cut the inside, gentle on the throttle because the rear will want to step out, keep it tight on the inside, wait for the thick part of that curve on the left hand side, down to second gear, wait for the turn in, open the steering, wait for that curve, brake, turn in late, open the steering as soon as you can, feed on the power. Gentle on this curb, because you'll see that it will want to throw the car out wide. Stay on the right hand side. Now we're looking for the, just before that board, about there. Down to second gear. Over that inside. Brake down to second gear. Either a V or a U. Wait for that last board. There's the last board. Gentle on the power. Don't go on the green stuff. Avoid this inside curve. Otherwise it can make the car a bit skittish. And we're going for the first corner again. The second board. Woo. Just coast around. If you lose it like there, just don't apply power. Just
Your brake
coast and
temperatures
hang on.
look good.
Over to the right hand side. Over this curb. Brake. Cut the inside. Just coast. Just coast. Around here. Down to third gear. Slight dab on brakes. Just make sure you get the nose in as soon as you're done there. Gentle on the throttle. Out we go. The car will feel light in your hands. Wait for the halfway mark.
Cold tyres all round.
Third gear, just hug it. Hug it. As soon as you feel that the grip is there, gentle on the throttle. Straighten up the steering wheel as soon as you can. Just before that curve, down to second gear. Hook it in there, straighten the throttle. Quick squirt. Lift again, just for the nose to get in. Gentle on the throttle here, because the rear will want to step out as soon as you go over that little bend there. You'll feel the rear just want to do this with you. Then at the green part, dab of brakes. Just be gentle on the throttle, no sudden movements. Wait for the thick part of the curb on the left hand side. Wait for the curb on the right hand side, brake, first gear. Open the steering as soon as you can. Just be gentle here, because the car will want to step out, especially if you touch the green part. Waiting for the middle of that red curbing, there we go. Into the middle of the corner, down to second gear. Then we bring in the car over this inside part. Don't run too wide. Stay in second gear. Just be patient with this corner. Wait for that last little square. There it is. On the power. Pressures are nearly fine. 29.3. Last lap.
Your quickest overall.
So just down on the brakes. Just hold it. Hold it. If you see you're going to make it, then only then apply the throttle. We're going to dab on the brake, fourth gear over the inside. Just feather the throttle, just keep it under control, down to third gear. Be gentle, even if you have to coast. And when you apply the throttle, be gentle. Over to the right hand side, bring it back to the left. We're going to brake in a straight line for the corner there, between the board and the curb. Round about there, down to third gear. Just coast, feel if the grip is there. If the grip's there, gently on the throttle. Push out on the other side. Just before the curve, down to second gear, be patient. Turn in, little squirt. Lift again, so that the nose can come in. Gentle on the throttle, you will see me feathering it as we go through there, just to keep it under control. Wait for the green part, brake. Down one gear. You can cut that inside, not the grass though. Wait for the curb on the left. There we go. Down to second gear. Be patient with it. Over to the right hand side. There's the curb. And as soon as you can, open the steering. Just clip that inside, not too much, otherwise you will want to lose it. Then we're waiting for the middle of the red part. There we go. Down to second gear. Over the inside. Brake, keep it in second. Just be patient. Wait for the last little square. There it is. Speed on the power. And that is in a nutshell, Silverstone in the wet.
You've just done a
If
212.73.
it's not flooded.
If it's not flooded. Shouldn't be. So it's just normally wet at the moment. The pit entrance for this, it's important to practice it. Because it's a straight pit entrance. So there's no weird curves or anything like that. So especially in the wet, you can overshoot it easily if you brake too late.
Where do you brake for it?
I will have to go and check for you quickly. Let me show you. Any questions in the meantime? So,
Your exit is clear.
first things
Watch the white
first,
line.
you'll
We need to get some heat into these
put
brakes.
your ABS on 1. Move your brake bias to the rear. PSIs, if the track is, if it's light rain or damp track, then you use your normal dry pressures. If it's medium rain, you normally go up about 1.5 PSI on your pressures from your dry setup. If it's heavy rain, then you'll go up 2 to 2.5 on your dry pressures. The most important thing is avoid most of the curbs, especially in areas where you have to apply power. And that green stuff especially, very, very slippy. Whatever you do, be very gentle with your throttle and your steering application. You can actually, in your setup under mechanical grip, maybe just on the steer ratio, just make it maybe 1 higher so that the steering is not as quick. That might also help just for you to not have such an extremely responsive steering in the wet, because it can be easy to lose it. You're very soft, Gabriel. I can hardly hear you. Still soft. Okay, so we're coming up to the pit complex now. So that some of the curbs you can hit or you can cross in the wet conditions. So as you come out of the last turn, you're going to accelerate. You're going to go straight in to the pits. And your brake board is there. So I would recommend in the wet, start braking where this grass ends on the right hand side. So roughly about here, but test it now while you do the practice. So this will be your braking marker as the grass ends on the right hand side.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I can. Okay, let's see how it goes.
So I wanted to say I've got a traction control 4, is that okay?
What car are you?
It's,
The Beamer. Yeah, the 4 should be
The
fine.
guy behind has just done a 213.65.
Who died? Oh, so that is a rough nutshell track guide of Silverstone in the wet. I'll put the recording up again, the track guide. I'll just edit out the bloopers in the beginning.